Welcome everyone. We are live with another episode of Level Up Law. We're here at South Carolina Legal Services every Tuesday at noon. We are leveling up your legal knowledge about an area of law that we practice in. I'm Senior Staff Attorney Susan Ingalls. I'm here with our producer Kenneth Elliott, and you are viewing live Dale Watson, the Long-Term Care Ombudsman with the South Carolina Department on Aging. We are continuing our observation of Older Americans Month, and what better way than to explore some of the services that Ms. Dale Watson and her group provide. Today, Dale's going to be discussing what is an ombudsman, what she does, what she doesn't do as our state long-term care ombudsman, and how that office helps people in long-term care facilities in South Carolina. But before we get started, we do want to let you know that this is not legal advice. It's just general information for the public, and we're excited to share the stage with some of our partners like Dale Watson. But if you do need the help of a lawyer, and of course Dale will provide information about how to contact them, but if you need the help of a lawyer, you can always call our intake line here at South Carolina Legal Services or apply online at sclegal.org. All of that information will be provided at the end of today's presentation. Also, as a reminder, all of our episodes are posted by our wonderful producer, Kenneth Elliott, to our Level Up Law playlist on our YouTube channel, usually within about 24 hours. Now, Ms. Watson can answer some general questions if time allows, so you can put in questions that you have there in the question box. And also, just a reminder, be sure to check out our social media, like and subscribe, and get all that up-to-date information that we provide here on Level Up Law and all of our other resources. Those websites and social media handles can also be found on that last slide in today's presentation. So without further ado, I want to welcome Dale Watson. Dale, take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Susie, for that introduction, and let's see if I can get started here. All right. I always tell people that I grew up in the country and I have 11 brothers, and so I could work on a car and change the oil and at one point could do an engine in a car because I had so many brothers. But technology sometimes provides me a challenge. So let's see how we go. But thank you all so much for allowing me to speak today and for talking about the Ombudsman's program. And hopefully you'll have some questions. If not, you don't think of them now. And if you think of them later, happy to answer and to provide any assistance. So with that, we'll get started. The Office of the State Long-Term Care Ombudsman's program is located in the South Carolina Department on Aging. We are a resident-focused, resident-driven program, and we are advocates for residents in long-term care environments. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about some precipitating events. What happened that brought this, ombudsman program into being? So just a little bit. In January of 1970, there was a fire in a facility, caused the death of 36 residents in an Ohio nursing home. And then that summer, there was 25 residents died of salmonella poisoning in a Baltimore nursing home after extensive medical delays, that folk were not taken to the hospital, to the doctor to receive medical treatment in a timely manner. And 12 people died initially. And when this was being covered by the media, the facility administrator is that really a big deal? He didn't see the importance of the lives of people in nursing home facilities. And eventually 25 folk died. So in 1971, President Nixon signed a directive establishing the Office of Nursing Home Affairs because people were very concerned about the care that was being provided in these long-term care facilities. And Dr. Marie Callender, not Marie Callender, who you see in the those frozen meals that you see in the frozen foods part of the grocery store. This is Dr. Marie Callender, and she was a nurse, an administrator, not nursing home administrator, but a government administrator. She was appointed as, for those of you who've been around a while, HEW is Health, Education, and Welfare, which has evolved over time to be now Health and Human Services. Dr. Marie Callender was appointed as the Special Assistant for Nursing Home Affairs. And in 1972, Congress appropriated funds to establish a nursing home ombudsman demonstration project. There were, I think about, if I'm remembering correctly, about 12 across the nation, and South Carolina was one of those special grants that was done at that time. So we've been around the program, I shouldn't say we, but the program has been around in various forms and in different places for quite a while, as you can see. And actually, this is the 50-year anniversary of it being here in South Carolina. So again, giving a little bit more history, 5 nursing home, well, actually 5, I was wrong, I said 12. 5 demonstration programs were established to focus on complaint resolution for nursing home residents. In 1978, the Older Americans Act, and that's where all the rules and regs for the ombudsman program reside. The Older Americans Act required all states to establish an ombudsman's program. It was based on the demonstration and the success of the demonstrations in those 5 states. The program was designed to be a local community program utilizing volunteers, and we do have volunteers in our programs throughout the state. And other states, some of them, like Florida, is totally volunteer driven. But in most other states, it's a combination of volunteers, but paid staff also. In 1981, the duties for the ombudsman's program were expanded, and to include board and care homes. In South Carolina, we call them assisted living facilities. And then they changed the name from nursing home ombudsman to long-term care to be more inclusive of the spectrum that people live in. And so again, move from nursing home ombudsman to long-term care to be more inclusive. In 1987, long-term care ombudsman were given access to resident records. Now, we can't go in and just snatch those records. We have to have consent from the resident or the resident representative to get access to the records. And then in 1987, also, federal law said that the states must prohibit willful interference of an ombudsman keeping the ombudsman from doing their duties, and or retaliation against an ombudsman, a resident, other individual related to the ombudsman program doing their duties. So there has to be a provision in each state law that speaks to willful interference and speaks to retaliation against a resident ombudsman doing their duties. So that's a kind of collapse of the history of the ombudsman program. So getting to the crux of over here, what is the long-term ombudsman? And some people are ombudsmen, are not quite sure what it is, and we get calls sometimes for ombudsman, Richland County ombudsman, and wanting to know if we could, move the dead cat and move the dead dog or different things. And we have to explain to people that's not who we are. We are long-term care ombudsman with a specified mission as advocates for residents of long-term care. So a long-term care ombudsman is a resident advocate. We work for the resident. We advocate for quality of care, quality of life in long-term care environments. And in South Carolina, long-term care, or I should say facilities, have been defined as nursing homes, intermediate care, intellectual disability facilities, assisted living or residential care facilities. And also, they've also defined some of the community training homes and supervised living programs in the DDSN arena as facilities. So in various states, the definition of facilities may be different and may be inclusive of other type licensed facilities, but this is what we do in South Carolina. The long-term care ombudsman provisions in the Older Americans Act include that we must investigate and resolve complaints. We provide information to families, to residents, to staff. We talk about resident rights. We are willing to go in and do training. We advocate for systemic changes to improve the residents' care and quality of life. And you'll notice on the side I have a little wand down there because sometimes that we feel like we are miracle workers, and hopefully we are for some folk. But we don't. That's not our job title. But sometimes we feel like we need a wand, or that we have a wand. So what do we do? What does an ombudsman do? So we identify, investigate, and we resolve complaints made by or on behalf of the resident. Sometimes the resident's not able to make that complaint, so sometimes it's made on behalf of a resident. You may have a church member who goes in, or a friend who goes in, a family member who goes in, and they see something going on and they make a complaint on behalf of the resident. Could be a staff who is seeing something that they think may need to be looked at, and so they may make a complaint. So we identify, we ourselves may be in a facility and we may see something, and so if we see that, we can make a complaint ourselves as ombudsman. But we identify, investigate, and we resolve complaints made by on behalf of residents. And we provide information to the residents. We provide information to the public about long-term care services. We talk about what is a facility, what a payment source is, what should people expect, what are the rights that folk have when they are in these facilities. And so we are constantly updating our information and letting folk know what long-term care is, and also what we do. We are responsible to provide technical support for the development of resident and family councils, because one of the goals that we try to do is to be sure that residents and family members can advocate for themselves. We can't be as an ombudsman, we can't be everywhere all the time. And our goal is also to empower the residents to advocate for themselves, and reminding them that when they're in the facility and they want to have a meeting, they have that right to meet together as residents and talk about the situation, and then how to go forth and present their issues to the management in the facility, and reminding them that they also have the ability to meet by themselves, that they don't have to have staff present. But that's part of what we do, is to educate, provide technical support for the family councils as well as the resident councils, to help them get these things started and to help them move along with the process. Ultimately, as I said earlier, to empower themselves to make decisions and to advocate for the issues that they think that are important. We also, as ombudsman, we seek legal, administrative, and other remedies to protect the residents. So there may be some things that we have to do I've testified before over in the Senate on issues related to the ombudsman. And as state ombudsman, I haven't testified before the Congress, but other state ombudsmen have testified before Congress, because there are issues related to the care of the quality of care of the residents. So those are things that the Older Americans Act says that we can do. One of the things that's a little different for the ombudsman's program is that even as I'm a state employee, and normally we are prohibited from lobbying, state employees are, but the state ombudsman have the ability to lobby as part of their advocacy. Now, we have no money So really, when we're considering it lobbying, it's really providing information to the legislators on what's going on with the residents so that the residents' voice is heard over in the legislative body. So that's when they talk about lobbying for us, that's really what they're talking about, is being sure that the residents' voice and the plight of the resident is being made known to the governmental bodies. So what else do? We advocate for changes, as I was saying, to improve their quality of life and care, because ultimately we want to be sure they get the best care and they have the best quality of life as possible. Because we are always educating on that's their home, that's where they reside, and reminding staff that when you come into their home, you are to provide them the best quality of care so they can have a great quality of life. And as I think I said earlier, we represent their interests before governmental bodies, and that may be helping them to file an appeal, educating them on what their rights are. We often will ask a resident if they receive a discharge notice, okay, how can we help you? Can we help you file that appeal? Do you want an appeal? What kinds of things do you want to help us to do with you? And so sometimes it may be going to the appeal with them. It's kind of difficult now since with COVID, but we continue to help and assist them, even if it's by Zoom. If we have to go to the facility and sit there with that resident by Zoom, then that's what we'll do. One of the things that the Older American Act states is that each resident should have timely and regular access to the ombudsman. So the way we accomplish that is to make at least quarterly visits to the residents and be sure that they know we exist and know who we are, know how to contact us, and not only them, but their families. So and one of the things is that facilities must post our information in their facilities. And we go in and we check to be sure. Also, when we're going in to visit with the residents, we go in to check that the residents can see our information, they understand what we do, and we also try to take them in information that they can keep in their rooms with our numbers. And so if they don't know, they don't remember, if their family friend comes in, they can use that information and they can contact us if they have questions or if they need our assistance. And as I said, we provide education on resident rights. We do that for the residents so that they know what their rights are. And we do it for the general public. And we will also provide that education to staff at facilities to remind them what the rights of residents are. You know, dealing with privacy, dealing with discharge, dealing with transfers, visitation. You know, we had such a round of that with the pandemic, and reminding folk that it's the residents' right to have visitors. And we understand that there was a pandemic and people were trying to keep people alive and keep them safe. But we were also trying to figure out a way to be sure residents had visitation, had access to their families, their friends, and access to us to assist them if necessary. So we're always working on resident rights, always trying to educate and trying to let people know what it is that residents have access to. So who are we not and what do we not do? There are some things we always have to remember about that. We don't conduct licensing and regulatory inspections or investigations of that nature. That's, DHEC licensing and certification. That's their job. And so we don't do that. We work closely with them and in these things. And if we see something we observe, then we will certainly pass that information over to DHEC, but that's their area of expertise for licensing and regulatory issues. We are not APS. We're not APS investigators. And what we do is we work for the resident, not on, you know, whatever that resident, whatever their resolution point is, that's what we do. And oftentimes I have to, as a state ombudsman, I have to remind myself and remind the local ombudsman that we work for them, and what we may want may not be what they want. And I remember going into a facility once, and we were asking for different things, and what we wanted for the resident, that's not what they wanted. And they just reminded us the place is clean and the staff are nice. And basically we had to kind of step back and go, okay, but we do have to be sure that at least the food is safe for you, and reminded staff of certain things for the food and for the medication. Those were the issues that the resident was wanting us to address. And so we had to remind ourselves, we may want Taj Mahal for them, but we have to always work for what they want. And that's where that's the box that we work in, so to speak. The box of what does the resident want? And let's advocate for what the resident wants. And if their needs change later on, then we'll change our approach later on. But ultimately, it's what the resident wants to do. And that's what our job is to advocate for that issue to their level of satisfaction. And of course, we do not provide direct care for residents. And part of when we were initially starting our volunteer program, getting our volunteers to understand you can't give them water because you don't know. They may have an order for nothing by mouth. You can't give them food because they may have a choking disorder. And so we do not provide direct care. We go in and get that staff member, because the staff member should be familiar with the resident, and we have then to provide the care. We don't just walk away. While we don't directly provide the care, but we make sure while we are present that what that resident needs, they get. I was in the Charleston area about 2 weeks ago, and I was going through a facility, and the residents wanted something to drink. And so we walked in to the facility, made sure they were sitting outside, and it was a little warm, made sure that the staff, knew the needs of the resident and waited to be sure that that need was executed. And so they came out, brought them something to drink, and the residents were good to go. And we moved on to the rest of the facility. So again, while we don't provide that direct care, if we see that the resident needs something, we contact the staff and ensure that that need is met before we move on to talking to other residents. So as I said before, we're resident advocates. And as you can see in this circle, that's it. We seek to resolve their complaints always to their satisfaction. Now, some of the times our families are not satisfied with us. And again, the resident drives the train, and the resident tells us what he or she wants us to do. And so we resolve the complaint to that resident satisfaction. We represent the resident's interest. And again, sometimes friends and family may want us to do other things. But if that resident is able to make that decision and tell us what he or she wants, then that's what we do. And sometimes, as I'm an old military person, sometimes they tell us to pound sand, go away. And so we'll kind of keep an eye on things, but we work on their behalf at their direction, doing what they want us to do, because it's their home. And so we don't want to be accused of overstepping our bounds, overstepping their rights, and not listening to them, because that's what we're there to do, to listen, to pay attention, and to work for them. As I said earlier, we empower residents and we promote self-advocacy. That's the biggest thing. If they know how to advocate for themselves, there are some things that they can do for themselves, then we have met one of our goals. We consistently try to do that, and we will be back in the facility. We are available to be sure that if they need just somebody present to help, then that's our job. For everything, we need consent. Ombudsmen need consent before sharing any information. Before we access their information, we need their consent, and we need consent before we can share their information. And that's a hard pill for some people to understand, but that's in the federal law. That's in the Older Americans Act. We cannot disclose who that resident is without their consent. We cannot access their records without their consent. So their consent drives the train. They tell us, again, this is what we want you to do, and this is who you can share this information with. And sometimes they don't want, even if the complainant is not the resident, we cannot share their name. So we cannot share the complainant's name without their consent, nor can we share the resident's name or information without their consent. So sometimes we have to figure out a different way to resolve the issue. If they say, I don't want people to know who it is, so we have to figure out a different way to resolve the issue if they still want us to do it. So we have to be a little creative, and that's where it goes back to that magic wand sometimes, trying to figure out a way to resolve the complaint, but also but still keep that resident and his or her information confidential and private if that is what they've asked us to do. Again, always the resident guides our action as to what we do and how far we go, how fast we go sometimes. That's based on what they want us to do. So residents of long-term care facilities have rights. We have resident rights, and that's in federal law. And it's different from state to state how what's been adopted as far as assisted livings. Now, as far as residents in nursing homes, those are all consistent across the nation. Their resident rights are consistent. South Carolina has chosen to adopt pretty much the federal Bill of Rights, and so that gives a great level of consistency here in South Carolina. So we're really lucky that our state chose to just adopt what the federal law did. But in the federal law, the Federal Bill of Rights for long-term care residents, the nursing home residents have a Bill of Rights, and that has to also be posted in the facility. And these are just some of them. This is not all of them. The right to a dignified existence, be free from abuse, neglect, and exploitation. The right to self-determination, to make those decisions for themselves. And you all probably have seen some of this as you've dealt with residents in long-term care. Sometimes people just assume that because you're in a facility that you can no longer make any decisions, you don't know anything. That's not the case, always. Folk can very well make their determinations. They know what they want. They know what they don't want. They know what kind of care. They definitely know what kind of care that they want. And sometimes it's not in agreement with what the family would state. And so, but the resident has a right to make those decisions as long as he or she can do so, to be fully informed about their care. We know how we are when we are going to the doctor's office. Or at least I know how I am. I'm asking questions, and I'm relatively healthy, but I'm asking questions, and I expect that doctor to speak to me and tell me what's going on. And so, same thing for the residents in facilities, to be informed about their care, to know what's going on, know what the medications are, know what the treatments are, and and what the expectations are when they're going through their individual care plans. what's going on with me? Those are things that should be told to them. They should be involved in their care, and they and their families, or whoever they've decided to be their representatives, should know what's going on regarding their health. They should have the ability to raise a grievance. Oftentimes I tell folks, wait a minute, let me look out the window. Yeah, I still see the red, white, and blue flag. I'm still in America. We still have rights. And that resident has additional rights on top of it. So they have the right to raise a grievance. If they're not satisfied with something, they have that right to grieve that issue. And so that's part of that self-advocacy that we're teaching and talking to residents and family members and resident representatives about, is that they have that right to make a complaint. Right of access. Right of access for us as ombudsman to come and visit them, and right of access for other folks to visit with them. Long ago and far away, I worked in a nursing home for about 10 years and had a family member, her son, had a resident whose family member, her son, worked late at night. And their routine was, when she was home, he would stop by her house on the way home. He got off from work at 11 o'clock at night, but he would stop by her house and he would bring her an RC cola and a little bag of peanuts. That was their ritual every night. He would check on her to be sure she was okay, and she would see that her son was okay before he went on home. He didn't live that far from her. And their ritual was the RC Cola and the peanuts every night. And so when she came to live in the nursing home, one of the things they wanted to stop that, but she would sit there and wait on him because that was their ritual. And so that was a part of the advocacy for, even though I worked for the facility, to advocate for that resident, because they didn't disturb anybody. And she was going to wait for him because she'd done it for years. And so she would wait. And so make sure he would quietly come in, give her little peanuts and her RC Cola, and then, and she would go to bed and he would go on out of the facility. Didn't take that long, but it was just a ritual, and that was their visitation. And that was his access to his mom to know his mom was okay. And so that's their right. They have a right to know what's going on with them financially. What are their funds looking like? The right to privacy. Reminding people to knock on the door when you go into their room, and let them tell you whether or not they can come in. But also reminding staff that when they're providing care to the resident, that close the door, pull the curtain, and accord them the level of privacy that they would want if they were in that situation. Residents who are in long-term care facilities are vulnerable. And we ourselves know that if you've ever been in a hospital, you feel really vulnerable. And so that vulnerability on a day-to-day basis, and just reminding them when you come in, when you want to come in, knock, get permission, and then also for staff, the same thing, but pull the curtain when you're providing care to them, and don't roll folk down the hall, the gowns flapping open and things of that nature. Cover them. Just remember, what if that's you, type thing, and the level of privacy that you would want, and their rights during a discharge or a transfer. What are those rights? Because those things happen. That sometimes they're voluntarily, involuntarily discharged, a transfer to other facilities. What their rights are, and then we provide assistance on those type things. So just throwing in again the rights to privacy, the information should be private. The information should be confidential. In the old days, before electronic records, it used to have the charts hanging out, and you could have stickers on it, and you would know certain things about that resident based on the stickers. Well, that information is private and confidential now. Even if the facility does not have a chart, if it does have a chart, then there should not be things on it that would identify certain conditions, because the information should be private and confidential. They should have respect and dignity. Those are basic human rights. Those are basic things, to be respectful and to treat residents with dignity. So those are basic things. And communication. They have the right to communicate. And those are things that we worked on when we were at the height of the pandemic. How to communicate with residents, figuring out different ways to communicate with them. It was a telephone, it was iPad, iPhone, Google Meets, it was going to do window visits, door visits. They have that right to communicate with whom they choose to communicate. And so being sure we reminded folks that that's a basic right. That's a human, well, it's a human right, but it's also a right that's accorded to them in the Bill of Rights. So again, as I said, long-term care residents have the right to voice grievances without fear of retaliation. And we can have some really feisty people in facilities, and they will light a fire under you, and rightly so. But they should not have any fear that they're going to be retaliated against because of them filing a grievance or filing a complaint. That's part of their right to do so, to voice their issue and to get some resolution on it, and not have their voice ignored. They have to be given advance notice of transfer or discharge. In a nursing home, 30 days, unless it's an emergency type thing. The normal notice is 30 days that they have in advance of the transfer or discharge. The residents have the right to have access to the long-term care ombudsman. So one of the things that's in the law is that as long as that resident wants to see us, then we can enter the facility. So that was one of the things we worked on again during the height of the pandemic. And in fact, the governor deemed ombudsman, long-term care ombudsman, as essential personnel, because we were trying to help people do compassionate care visits for folk who were at end of life, trying, along with the regular visits. So, but we couldn't always get our work done because we didn't have access. So once we had training on, how to protect ourselves and the equipment to help protect ourselves, one of the things the governor did was to make long-term care ombudsman as essential personnel, so that they would have access to us in person. But we were already visiting via phone, via iPad, iPhone, window visits. But it's a different thing when you actually can see the resident and walk into the facility and get a feel of what's going on with them. So that's one of the things that's in the resident rights, is that they have to have the access to the long-term care ombudsman. So many of those things we talked about. And so we handle complaints, as we said, we address concerns that impact. It can handle one resident, it can be several residents, could be all of the residents. We cannot share, as I said before, any information without that resident's consent, or whoever we're working for. Federal law grants us access to the information, again, with permission, and we're required to keep that information confidential. We must provide, facilities must provide the Ombudsman program, immediate access to the resident. If the complaint is from someone other than the resident, we will visit the resident in order to understand the resident's ability to make decisions. And again, if that resident says, I'm fine, we will keep an eye on issues, but we'll also remind the complainant that we work for that resident. And if the resident does not want us to move forward, then we don't. And I see I was very, very redundant here with the immediate access, but I did want to say in here that we are considered a health oversight entity. We are not a business associate when it comes to the HIPAA and whatnot. We are considered to be a health oversight entity, which is a different level of responsibility. And we always say we were confidential before HIPAA was cool, kind of thing. We because of a high level of confidentiality that we have. So just really quickly, a couple of things that we help to work on or bring to the attention. February, the AGs announced that a Spartanburg man was arrested for neglect, exploitation, breach of trust of some assisted living residents. When we really have a great working relationship with the Attorney General's office, specifically the Medicaid fraud unit. We work locally with our local law enforcement. 7 were charged after a vulnerable man was dragged by his ankles at a South Carolina assisted living facility. And one of the things, we don't do criminal. We don't do a criminal case. If it looks a hint of criminality, any criminal element, we turn it over to law enforcement, be that SLED, if it's in a DDSN or a DMH, or disability special needs or mental health facility, or if it's in a nursing home or a residential care, then we'll turn it back over to the local law enforcement, because we don't do criminal investigations. In January, the Attorney General's office announced the arrest of an Irma man for fraud and exploitation of a vulnerable nursing home assistant. The wife of an assisted living facility was charged with neglect of residents. And then, like last year, a woman was strapped to a toilet at a care facility and arrests were made. These are things oftentimes that come to our attention. And once we go in and we see, oh my gosh, we will turn it over to local law enforcement. We were, as Ombudsman, we were worked on a case in the upstate where the owner of the facility, the allegation is that he stole money from the residents, but that's a case that we worked on quite some time with the local law enforcement prior to the arrest being made by the by the Attorney General's office. And so, and that case will go to trial, but that's one that the Attorney General's office is working on. And we, as I said again, we have turned a lot of things over to them that we see either to them or law enforcement. Oh, quickly, our role in transfer and discharge. We let that resident or representative know of their rights, ask that resident or that representative if they need our assistance. We work on behalf of the resident. We refer them sometimes to legal services because there are some things that may be going on that requires the services of an attorney. And we certainly don't want to be accused of practicing without a license, and legal services has been a good partner, and we certainly want to turn things over to them when it's time. We educate facilities and residents. Courts have the residents' discharge rights and laws. And again, we continue, I speak that word, empower the residents to be in charge of his or her life. There are reasons for discharge, but the reasons must be valid. And there are only 6 reasons why a facility can transfer a resident against their will. 1, they can't meet the resident's needs, and that can't be a nursing home saying we can't meet your needs when it's a nursing home need. If that resident's working at that level of care, then is there at that level of care, then there should not be a reason why they can't care for him. And if they're saying those type things, that's when a lot of times we're called in to help and to talk about what is it that, why is it that you're saying you can't meet this need when you provide this level of care. If the resident no longer needs the services, if there's a danger, if the resident's behavior presents a danger to the safety of others in the facility, that's a reason for discharge. A danger to him or herself, and others. If they fail to pay, that's a reason for discharge. However, if the resident has applied, if this is a nursing home and the resident has applied for Medicaid, then that again is an appeal that should be made, and until that's resolved over at Health and Human Services. So many times we talk with the resident, educate the resident, and if necessary, we help them with the appeal process. If the facility is closing, that again is a reason for immediate discharge, from a facility. If the resident gets, or their family member gets a discharge notice, it has to be communicated in writing, in a language and a manner that the resident can understand. They must be given at least 30 days prior to the discharge date, and I think I said that earlier. They have the right to appeal, and they must do so before the date of discharge. And that's one of the education pieces of, what your rights are, but also what the process is, and that, you need to move with a level of speed because you have a set amount of time. And again, the federal law provides rights and legal protection when the resident's facing a discharge. So I'm really, really quickly, I'm just going to talk a minute about the Prime Ombudsman program, which is in, the Office of the State Long-Term Care Ombudsman. It's a federal grant that I wrote a couple of years ago, and it's part of a demonstration program, and it works to assist beneficiaries who have both Medicare and Medicaid, and they're enrolled in a Healthy Connections Prime program. So there were 10 demonstration programs done across the nation. South Carolina was chosen to do one of them, and South Carolina chose to do persons who were 65 and older, who have both Medicare and Medicaid. And the Prime Ombudsman assists beneficiaries with their concerns about benefits, their Medicare, Medicaid, and services and health services that they're getting. And these Prime Ombudsmen, these are healthcare ombudsmen, they educate the beneficiaries about their rights. They seek to resolve their issues, and they help them with the Medicare, Medicaid appeals process. And I'm very lucky to have two ladies who work over there who have probably a combined experience of about 45 years together of experience working with Medicare and Medicaid issues. So I kind of think, so how could you guys help? And I'm always appealing for the ombudsman program. What I should have put there too was, you can volunteer. We are always looking for good people to volunteer in the ombudsman's program throughout the state. And so if you think that's something you would like to do, it's a special thing to volunteer. I always tell folks, you get more than you give when you volunteer in a long-term care facility, because you're helping bring voice to a resident. But when folks from the legal services arena assist with the appeal of discharges and educating them on what's going on, provide legal assistance sometimes for the resident, because there may be some things that they need, documents and whatnot, that they may need to execute while they're in the facilities, be they in a nursing home or a residential care facility or DDSN facility sometimes, a DMH. But there may be documents that residents may need to execute but don't have the funds to pay for expensive documents. We're not talking lawsuits, anything, but sometimes they just, and they don't always have the ability to go to an attorney. So again, these are ways you can help. Is one, to volunteer, assist with appeals and discharges, and providing legal assistance to residents. It is so I challenge you to do that, and we certainly hope I've answered your questions today. Help prevent elder abuse. Next month is going to be World Elder Abuse Awareness Day on June 15th, but we are having something every Wednesday in June, just as a reminder to prevent elder abuse, because we do have that situation. And when I looked at our data for the last year, physical abuse was number 3 in the number of cases that number of complaints that we received for the last year. And so we want to, as much as possible, prevent, be proactive, and educate folk on reporting, and just seeing and keeping an eye on their relatives and friends. So how to contact me? This is it. This is my contact information, and I apologize to Susie for not meant to put in the slide for everybody throughout the state. And if I didn't say it earlier, there are 10 regional offices across the state of South Carolina, and we cover all counties across the state. Our services are free of charge, and we are happily respond to you. And if you can't get the ombudsman out in the region, because a lot of times they're out in the facilities, and so they may not be able to respond to you right then. So you're happy to call here, and this is our number. And the number below is my desk number, and the 800 number rings to the front. So happy to talk to you about the Long-Term Care Ombudsman program. And if you have issues dealing with Medicare, Medicaid, and you're part of the Health Connections Prime, we can certainly put you in contact with the Prime Ombudsman who are here in this office also. So hopefully I promise not to talk over. And so that is the conclusion. And this is your South Carolina Legal Services contact information. So Susie, I'm finished, and you guys can come on back. Thank you so much again for allowing me the opportunity to speak. It is my hope that you will visit a resident, that you will assist in the advocacy process, because I love what I do, and it is just so worth it to be able to advocate on behalf of residents in long-term care facilities. Thank you.
Dale, thank you so much, and I am sure that is quite a rewarding job, and what a wonderful presentation. And of course, you did a fantastic job of answering all the questions, including some that I might have asked myself, but such a crucial service that you guys provide to protect our older adults in South Carolina in long-term care facilities. I mean, that is just great. Thank you so much for an excellent presentation. And there's always things that I think stand out for me. Things like the example of the special things like the RC Cola, or what we often don't think about, confidentiality of information on the chart. That was so just all of those kind of things that I don't think we all think about. But I think most importantly, what stands out to me that you said is reminding staff in these facilities that is that person's home. That really struck a chord for me. So thank you so much for such a wonderful presentation. And also let me thank our audience for joining us today here and later on YouTube. If you're there, we will be posting information down below. And I do want to let everyone know that if you found this to be helpful, I'm sure you did, and you think it might be helpful to others, which I'm sure it will, please definitely go to our YouTube channel and find this video on that playlist for Level Up Law. And, you know, share the broadcast. It's great if you give it a thumbs up and like it, but share it out, because this is such important information for everyone in South Carolina, you know, particularly those of us who have a friend or family member who is in the long-term care facility. We want as many people as possible to get important information like this. And always remember, while you're there on the YouTube channel, like and subscribe for more, and sign up for those notifications so you can get notified and alerted every time we post a new video. And also keep in mind, here's the information on the screen for our websites and our social media. You can always find a lot of good information there. And also, that's where you can register for the next episode of Level Up Law. Next week on Tuesday, please join us for Elder Mental Health Awareness. We'll be joined by Teresa Skojit, who is the Mental Health Services Manager for South Carolina Safe Seniors out of the College of Nursing at MUSC. Teresa is going to be sharing information about the psychological impact of abuse on our older adults. So please do register and join us for that live. You can do that again on our Facebook page, on these other social media websites, and so forth. So once again, Dale Watson, thank you so much for being with us today. That was awesome. And thanks to everyone for tuning in today on Level Up Law. That concludes today's webinar. So long, everybody.